So I guess Poison Ivy is having some fun with the Injustice League. I mean, really. So let's see. We've got Atomic Skull, Black Adam, Count Vertigo, the Joker, Poison Ivy, Ultra Humanite, Wotan? Okay, this is a really weird crew. But whatever. So I put a note at the beginning of my notes here. Spiner, that is to say, Brent Spiner as the Joker. We'll see what I think of that. I've seen a lot of people play the Joker over the years, so, including Mark Hamill, Joe DiMaggio, Heath Ledger, Jack Nicholson. You know what? I'm going to stop. There's a lot. A lot of people play the Joker, so we'll see what you think of him. And there's this nice little bit. Why is he still here? Zatara's our current, rotating person, and Captain Marvel's just hanging out munching, They get the cool assignments. What? I love them. So this is a little bit too obvious. In fact, I'm hoping that a future episode will have at least someone figure out that this is a feint. This is a false flag operation. We're totally the secret society behind everything. That's why we're... No, this is too overt. It also doesn't make quite enough sense. And I'm not exactly an expert on DC, and I'm thinking that. Now, granted, I do know that the light exists and that it's not these people, but come on. Anyways, poor Artemis. She's always got troubles with drowning. There's a lot of action in this episode, so I don't have a lot to comment on. There's a lot of shots, though, that they do some good stuff with. This is a speculation, but I would imagine this episode exists for the toys. They show off a lot of League members who usually don't get any screen time. In fact, they don't even have any dialogue. And in fact, they show off quite a few Injustice members in action who also do not get dialogue. Several of them have no voice at all, which makes sense. One of the things I've said many times is the value and advantage of doing a animated work or a CGI work, both kind of work the same way, instead of a live action, is if you want to have a character there, you can just draw them there. You don't necessarily need to bring the actor in to do the lines in order to have them be present and part of the story, right? There's actually multiple different creative ways to have a character be literally present and not say anything. But if you're doing that live action, well, then you're kind of wasting them, right? If you've ever seen a live-action TV show, this is one of the reasons why multiple characters, especially in the more modern era, will insist on having a line or two because they bothered with makeup call and all that, right? This was actually a huge issue. Back in early TNG, people would get rather upset that they'd be called in to do nothing. No lines, no acting, just being part of the background. And they're right. That's a complete waste to do that. But I digress. So, getting back to the thing. So, the Joker's big contribution is he can control multiple things at once. Yeah, okay, I can kind of buy that, given the way he is. And I suppose I should go ahead and give away my impression of the Joker, which is... I like Brent Spiner as an actor, and I think he's a decent voice actor, but I think the Joker here fell completely flat for me. And I emphasize that word, flat. He sounded like someone who was trying to be funny and wasn't, or trying to be crazy and wasn't. And I don't want to, as weird as this sounds, I don't actually lay that on the feet of the actor. I feel like the Joker himself was written very, very off for the Joker. And it just didn't work. And so as a consequence, he was just kind of a boring inclusion to the story. And when the Joker is a boring inclusion to the story, well, that's kind of interesting in its own right, isn't it? There's this bit where she says, "Oh she's made contact, Artemis." No. And now it's an obvious callback to the beginning of the episode, but I mean seriously, pronoun game, people. Pronoun game. So yeah, I talked about the voice acting thing. Wotan manages to take out the group basically by himself. They bring in the heavy guns, which is the Fate helmet. And then there's this bit where the episode suddenly starts to make a lot more sense. Hear me out for a second. I've said before that my opinion is that they should start low tier and maybe work their way up to high tier. Suddenly taking on this group is kind of kicking them upstairs a little bit early. Granted, not all these people are what I would call heavies, but I mean, Black Adam, Atomic Skull, Wotan. Yeah, that's not exactly a small group. So it makes sense that this is kind of, the idea is them getting kicked upstairs. Well, it's actually not. They do technically lose the battle. They just win the war. And that's the point. Their job was to move in, take out the source of the problem. As soon as the source of the problem, which is the controlling plant, is dealt with, the rest of the League is now freed to come deal with this. The only problem was they had to finish up whatever plants were there and then physically transport themselves to the site, which they already know where it is. This is actually quite brilliant tactically in its own way. And of course, it makes sense for the character arc of the characters. See, this is a step up for them. They are now able to stall the heavy players. Stall some of the people who are much higher tier than them. They can't beat them yet, nor should they be able to. I like that. It's a nice little touch, and it shows the progression of the team. I also love Bats' comment. You have performed satisfactorily. He says that your performance was satisfactory or adequate or something like that. And I'm just reminded of the old Vulcan praise, how that is very high praise from a Vulcan. And I have a feeling it's the same thing from Bats. Although that's 2 times Fate has let someone go. Is he going to get a permanent person in this show? I'm just kind of curious. They keep bringing Fate up. He's got to be coming up somewhere, right? Anyway, so hey, Savage. Vandal Savage. Huh. Savage is an interesting character for me. I actually don't like him much in the comics, mostly because he's gross, but I did kind of like him in the DCAU, especially in the alternate Nazi storyline, which some of you probably know what I'm talking about. So this is the first time they actually show all the light crew without the... Now, what's funny is the only one that's really a revelation is Savage himself. As we've been going through this, I've actually basically guessed all the rest of them. Queen Bee, Luther, I can't remember his name, the Sorcerer, the Chaos Lord dude, the Brain. So it's interesting to see them being presented in this manner. I'm curious what they're going to do next, because at this point, this is like this is the breather part. So we're probably going to be entering some, lower tier, lower severity stories before we kick things back up. At least that would be by presumption, which we'll find out if that's true next time.